Hi, I'm Ron Landis. Welcome to my studio.
Okay, so when I got this running just to see if it would bounce up and down, there's a few things I forgot to reinstall in order to make it ready for coining. And the first are these ram guides. You can see, I need something a little stronger here. You can see they move. And they've got urethane spacers in them. And what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to adjust those. When I set the press up and it's open, there's a little bit of extra bounce in there, residual from the hydraulic pressure. And we're going to set those ram guides to keep that solid, to keep this table solid. And I just had to reinstall them. I left them out when I put it back together. And, I thought they would just slip right back in because of the shape, and they did from the back. They slipped in real easy. But the front one, these doors are in the way. So, and I didn't want to take the doors off because they're all cammed and fancy. So it was easier just to take the whole plate out. And I've got the plate in there now, and we'll tighten those up. And then we'll go from there. See if I can move that back, you can watch it. So we won't tighten it all the way, we'll just snug it up against the see how I can move it so I can actually see it move. So you can see the piece of, this looks like phenol. It has that kind of fiber look to it. So it's like a fibrous plastic. It's like woven plastic. Or plastic impregnated weave. I don't even know how they make that. You know, so that's kind of an interesting thing. I think they like vulcanize the plastic inside of fiber, inside of a mesh. That's kind of curious actually. If somebody knows how that's made, it'd be an interesting little topic of discussion. Here's one of those wedges, and that disc sits inside there. And that disc is what rides against the metal. So it's not metal to metal contact on those ram guides or on the table guide. It's that nice plastic, that phenol. So that stuff is pretty slippery. So what we'll do is we'll get it snug, and then when we run the press, we'll tighten those enough to get rid of that bounce. I know, very scientific, I know. There's a plastic nut, or a plastic insert on the nut, which makes, it's kind of like a locking feature on some nuts. And it makes it so they don't spin freely. And, you know, when you get your nut locked down, they won't, you know, shake loose. But in the meantime, when you're dealing with them, they're kind of a pain in the butt. Okay, so I actually have some concern that these nuts aren't properly fitting to that. I have some concern over that, but I don't have much play because there's 4 bolts here that connect to the ram, and then there's 2 major bolts that connect to the returns. So it's not like I have the play to move this far enough to take up slack. There's just not much there. Not exactly sure what that means. We'll find out when we get it bouncing up and down. Okay, so we're gonna try and use some of the die sets that we have floating around here, some of the tools we have floating around here to set up the press to try and get some strikes going through it, just to make sure we can understand how it's functioning. We haven't built a coining chamber specifically for this press yet. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of like Frankenstein a bunch of stuff from a bunch of other machinery around here. I think the technical term we use around here is to kludge. And we're gonna kludge a bunch of stuff together. And I'll tell you, I think what's interesting about this, and would be interesting for a lot of people, is with safety in mind, there's nothing wrong with doing something that is maybe appears to be off. I mean, yeah, we'd all like top shelf, stainless steel, whatever, you know, everything pretty, perfectly matched. But one of the things that we forget about that in tool and die work and things like that is a lot of time is spent. And I've been in big complex shops, and I've been in small how-to-do shops like this. And really, there's nothing wrong with the kludge. There's nothing wrong with you know, Frankensteining stuff together, as long as safety precautions are met and things are secured properly, and you know, all the certain things are taken. So, for instance, this is a hardened plate from the ram. This is a hardened plate from a coining press that we have in the back. So I'm going to put that hardened plate. Now I got hardened plate. This is a hardened plate from our die set that has the die set in it that I need for what we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is, when we get that in there, we're actually going to use that with these T-nuts that I took from a punch and die set over there that fit perfectly. So that's what's called a T-nut. And that T-nut goes in that slot perfectly. Oh, look at that. Oh, yeah. So you can tighten down. And like I said, this is probably undersized, but we're not doing any high pressure. There's not going to be much pressure applied to this bolt. It's just going to keep stuff registered. So we should be okay in the short term until we get something real built. We're not going to put this through its courses, so I'm not too worried about it. But like I said, you know, you do what you got to do. And it might look stupid, but if it works, it's not stupid. So I'm not going to use that. Like I said, we're just going to kludge this till we get what we need. I got to find a washer to keep that from getting in. We're going to use those to secure that. If you don't have multiple cans and containers of random nuts and bolts, what kind of machinist are you? And that goes for really everybody. If you don't have a couple cans of nuts and bolts and screws at home, what kind of family man are you? My dad had 3 coffee cans full of screws by the time he was 30 years old. So if you don't have at least 1 coffee can full of random screws by the time you're 25, you really need to question your life. Just saying. Oh, I think this is gonna work, y'all. Little standoff triangles. Now, I'm gonna admit that's not something your average homeowner is gonna have in there. But it gives you a little standoff point to create down pressure. Once we get it lined up, then I'll tighten those down. If you can see how that works, it's creating, you know, it's like a lever. So it creates a down pressure, and you'll put all the pressure right there. I don't like these big bolts in here, but do what you got. Like I said, do what you got to do. As long as it's safe. Just to me, there's just, you know, length of bolt. I like them as short as possible. No clearance issues, you know. These are the bolts that came with it, so I know right away that they'll fit. Okay, I'm happy with all that. Let's put the dies in. you follow us on Instagram, you can see, you know, we drop little pieces of what we do on there. Probably a little, as much content or more than we do on YouTube. But on there, I have a little thing about these keys that I use for these die setups. I have this, it's pre-struck, aligned the way I like it. And what I'm able to do is just set it in there. I can take the 2 dies. I already know how they're lined up how I like. And now that I know those are going to be perfectly matched, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the press. I'm going to cycle this so that it closes. There won't be any pressure on it. It's just enough to close the dies together. And when it's closed, I say no pressure. What I mean is no tonnage. There's enough pressure on there to keep the dies together, and I'll be able to tighten everything down. That way, using that key, what I call a key, that struck piece, I'm able to close everything, tighten everything down. It's all locked in, set up, ready to go, perfectly lined up. Then you can open it all up and it's ready to strike. A little tip, trick, whatever. Okay, I'm gonna hit the power and we're gonna go from there. My stroke. So what I need to do is I do need to shim this up. I've got to go get another piece of hardened material so I can raise that up. And I can feel about how much here. Quite a bit. I really need to find an inch. Real quick, you know, I put those wedges in. I noticed there's movement in here. I remember that I didn't tighten those down yet. That's kind of a big deal. But you see the wedges took out that extra bump that was happening. So I'm excited about that. But I do need to find as much travel as I need a little more height. And it looks like I can get, I'm gonna need more than that. I gotta find longer bolts. And we're back. All right, so I did end up using that 1-inch plate, which is hardened. I got slightly larger triangles so that I can get the height. These might actually have a specific name that I don't know. I've just always called them setup triangles. Again, with the bolts, I always try to keep like everything uniform so you don't have to have this weird mix of wrenches, but again, we're doing what we can to get this thing going. So, all right, let's see if we've got enough height now. Oh yeah, see? Oh, now there's pressure on that. So I can tighten everything down. We'll start with this top die. I can see by the clearance back here, I'm not going to hit anything. I'll tighten that up. Tighten everything out here. Tighten that up. The ones I can reach. Got 3, those are nice and tight. Now we'll tighten the bottom die here. Oh, you can see it moving? That's because this block is not yet tightened down. Tighten that. Not much room for my big hands here. Like I was saying before, you know, this isn't optimum, but it'll work for now. It'll get us what we need in order to get some test strikes done. Alright, we got that one tight. Now we'll get these triangles tight. Sure, I'll get a little more flex than I would like in these hold downs because they're just cold roll steel. But we just need to keep the die down. So when I release that, what should happen is that top die will stay up, that'll drop down, and I'll pull my little keyed piece off there and we should be ready to strike. Oh yeah, baby. Look at that. So now I know, since that was all locked in, that top die and bottom die are registered exactly how I wanted them. So that's kind of a cool little trick for you, you guys that are using the dies. Let me go get some blanks and we'll get a strike. This is huge, Matt. Let me go get some blanks. Let me get Ron too, because he's got to see it. Yeah, man. They're Cluj. So I got the blanks that have been prepared. They're free-form. Yep. So this first strike won't have any pressure on it. We'll take a hit, we'll turn the pressure up, we'll check because our gauge isn't working right now. That's another repair we have to make. But visually we can see if it's full struck, so that's not a problem. All right, let's do this thing.
Let's do this thing, man.
Oh, you know what I want to do? We'll actually turn the stroke on so it strokes by itself.
Hey, yeah. Yeah, that's the deal there.
Ooh, look, there's some imprint on there.
A little bit.
We'll get there.
Need some more. Don't work the first time, give it a little more pressure.
A little more here. We'll find it.
That big chip.
Not getting the pressure I want here.
I don't hear it complaining yet.
Me neither. I also don't see it raising in pressure.
It's on chip.
It would give more than that. It's dead. I mean, it's doing nothing. So what does that mean?
You got bottomed out, are you?
I could be bottomed out. I could be bottomed out.
Okay.
Okay, gotta go higher. I don't have the long enough bolts then.
Oh.
These are the longest ones I could find.
What can you do it to the upper part? Space it out a bit? Space behind there?
Maybe a little bit. You know, it might be enough.
Looks like you don't need much.
see I only have about 1/8 of an inch on the bottom. Then I found a shim on the top that was about 1/2 inch. I got a 1/2 inch gap in there up top to suck up the clearance where I could. Hopefully that gives it enough. We're at the top of the stroke now. I got this little arrow on the door that says top of stroke, and I still have 1/2 inch there. So hopefully this should be enough.